What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg on the YouTube.com. Down there, we like magic, and today, as usual, we've got more Aether Revolt spoilers for you. It's about midday right now, so there's probably going to be more, so join us later for probably another video. But for now, we've got like 7 or 8 different Aether Revolt spoilers and all the spoilers from the Planeswalker packs, and those aren't the best cards in the world. I'd forgotten what bad cards look like after looking at these Aether Revolt spoilers. So let's run through the Planeswalker Pack stuff first before we get to the really juicy stuff from Aether Revolt. First of all, there's Pendulum of Patterns. That's 2 generic mana for an artifact. When Pendulum of Patterns enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. You can pay 5 and tap it and sack it to draw a card. That's really bad. That's a pretty bad card right there. 5 mana, tap, sack, draw a card is way too much, and 2 mana for 3 life doesn't really do a whole lot outside of the Lone Rider deck, and you've got better options than that. So, moving on. Here's Inspiring Roar right here. It's 4 mana, that's 3 and a white for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If this was instant speed, I would almost be a fan of it, but as it is, no. As it is, no. There's just, again, there's stuff at even lower cost that's better. Like, Make a Stand is probably better than this, even though it doesn't put counters on your creatures. I'm not a big fan. Here's Tezzeret Simulacrum right here. It's 3 generic for a 2/3 artifact golem, and you can tap it to have target opponent lose 1 life. If you control a Tezzeret Planeswalker, that player loses 3 life instead. I wish they could hit creatures. This could hit creatures, I'd be down with it. Although it is a pinger, it's a pinger that if you control a Tezzeret, it gets really serious. So I like the card, actually. I don't think that it's god-awful, but I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play either. Here's a Ajani's Comrade right here. It's 2 mana, that's 1 and a green for a 2/2 elf soldier with trample. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control an Ajani Planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Comrade. Okay, so with the Ajani's that don't cost 6 mana, this looks like it might be sort of okay, but there's just better options. That's what kills some of these cards, is there's just better options than this. Here's a Ajani's Aid right here. It's 4 mana, that's 2, a green and a white for an enchantment. When a Ajani's Aid enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Ajani Valiant Protector, reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. Sacrifice Ajani's Aid, prevent all combat damage a creature of your choice would deal this turn. Okay, so this is really bad. Like, this is bad. Like, you get a one-time fog on 1 creature if you sacrifice this, and you're stuck into going and getting the worst Ajani that's ever existed. So I just don't... This is bad. This is a bad card. 4 mana for a fog effect and go get the worst Ajani ever. Here's Tezzeret's Betrayal right here. That's 5 mana, 3 a blue and a black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature. You may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Tezzeret Master of Metal, reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, you shuffle it. Alright, so for my money, this is the much better Planeswalker rare. And, you know, I like this a little bit. You know, the Tezzeret that it's going to look at is only 1 spot on the curve higher than this. So on curve, it makes a little bit of sense. And it gets a creature off the board. I mean, all that's good. Like, the Ajani thing just basically removes a creature from combat for the turn. That's bullocks. This actually straight up destroys a creature, so, you know, it's not terrible. It's not going to see any standard play whatsoever, obviously. None of these will, but at the same time, I think that this is probably the most powerful card we've looked at so far. Very likely. It's between either this or Tezzeret Simulacrum. I think the Tezzeret Simulacrum could actually see, like, some budget decks play. I know that people like pingers. I just really wish I could hit creatures. But, like, if you've got, you know, either Tezzeret out, then hitting for 3 damage every turn is not bad. It's really not that bad. Okay, so it's time to start actually talking about some good cards here, which is nice, because like, talking about this Planeswalker Pack cards is like literally giving me a headache. I've got a jerk of a headache right now, but hopefully that will clear up when we talk about some of these good cards from the Aether Revolt main set. Starting with this one, Hope of Ghirapur. This is a good-looking card to me. This is 1 mana for a legendary artifact Thopter. It's a 1/1 with flying, and you can sacrifice it to have, until your next turn, target player who was dealt combat damage by Hope of Ghirapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. Okay, so this looks marvelous to me, and any deck can play it too. It's good not only against control decks, which is the obvious application of it. Hey, you just took damage from this. I don't want you countering my spells for the rest of the turn. Sacrifice this thing, and I can play whatever I want. That's great, considering this only costs 1 mana. You can swing with it as early as turn 2, man. Sometimes on turn 3 or 4, you're going to want to sack this and go ahead and keep them from countering stuff. This also works against stuff that's not control, obviously, against the vehicles or artifacts decks. If you're on the play, you get this turn 1, they play their land, turn 2, swing in with this, sacrifice it. Now they can't cast a Copter, they can't cast Heart of Quran, and you can cast whatever you want. You know, you basically get a turn up on them in the tempo in a deck like, you know, against a deck like Vehicles. That's, whew, that is really, really good to get a turn up on those decks, because those decks are very, very fast, and that's the whole point of them. So if you take a turn away from them, they're in trouble. Conversely, this could be played in the vehicle decks to keep your stuff from getting negated or ceremonious rejection or whatever. So this card will see at least sideboard play, if not more. This could see main deck play, if only because vehicles are going to be a serious scourge in this format. I like this card an awful lot, and I don't think it's going to get super duper expensive. It doesn't look like a chase rare or anything, but it does look like a standard playable utility card. Here's Life Crafter's Bestiary right here. It's 3 mana for an artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay green. If you do, draw a card. Alright, so hopefully this is a cycle of artifacts. This looks pretty good to me, and everyone's already calling it Calodex, like Pokédex, but Calodex. That's cute. That is just about the cutest nickname for a card I've heard in a really long time. So I do think it's pretty darn good, honestly. Both scrying and drawing are things that you'll want to do. So I don't think 3 mana is great. I think it's a little bit prohibitive, but for the stuff that the card does, that's not a bad deal at all. And this is an easy commander staple all day from here on out. I think commander decks are going to want to play this all the time. So good on you, commander players. You've got this now. But as far as standard goes, I'm not sure. It may be slightly priced out of the market at 3 mana. But the effects are both obviously very good. I just want to point out how good scrying during your upkeep is. You scry right before your draw step to help fix the draw you're about to make. That is very, very powerful. And just making your 2-drops into 3-drops that help you draw a card is also not bad at all. And the good thing about this too, by the way, is that like when you're in top deck mode and you play like a 1 or 2 mana creature, you draw a card off of it, and you can chain those sometimes, you know, as long as you don't draw a land. So that's pretty good too. The card actually looking better the more I think about it, but will it actually end up seeing play? I'm just not sure that it's worth the slots in like aggro decks. Crazy vehicle incoming here. This is Aethersphere Harvester. It's 3 mana for an artifact. It's a vehicle, and it's a 3/5 flying. You can crew it for just 1. When Aethersphere Harvester enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. And you can pay an energy to have Harvester gain lifelink until end of turn. Let me just point out all the crazy stuff this card does. It's got an enter the battlefield trigger that gives you energy, even if you don't use it for the lifelink, but it can gain lifelink. That's pretty good too. It crews for only 1. It costs just 3, and it's a 5 toughness flyer. That is so good. And I've already said people are going to be trying to take out a 4 toughness flyer with things like, you know, Grasp of Darkness, and because of Smuggler's Copter and Heart of Quran, people are going to be using like Fatal Push to help do that, you know. So this is out of the range of both of those things, both Grasp and Fatal Push. Like Tears of Valakut is probably the best thing that can take it down, and that's a strictly sideboard piece for most decks. And a lot of decks don't even play it yet, so, but they might after this. They could after this. This card just looks so incredibly solid to me, you know. 3/5 flyer for 3, and you barely have to crew it. You barely have to crew this stupid thing. Just one. Crew 1. And you have basically a 3/5 lifelinker twice that flies. That's so... I mean, these are just obviously like oppressive stats on this thing. 3 mana, 3/5 flyer with lifelink and an ETB trigger, and it only crews for 1. Like, come on, man. Come on with the vehicles already. Here's Heroic Intervention right here. It's just 2 mana, 1 and a green for an instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Alright, so another in the line of green counter spells against things like removal and stuff. But this looks especially good considering it says permanent. So you can protect artifacts from you know, mass removal and stuff. You can protect your vehicles from things like mass removal. And even just spot removal. I mean, at 2 mana, it's probably worth playing this just to save 1 creature's life, you know. I probably think that you don't want to play this and Blossoming Defense in the same deck. That's a lot of slots taken up, and this will probably end up being a sideboard card more than anything. And you know, in this format, we've also got things like Avacyn, we've got things like Selfless Spirit, which is probably better than this, all things considered, but still obviously a good card that will probably see at least some play in sideboards. I mean, being able to protect your entire team from a board wipe is pretty good. That's, I mean, obviously pretty darn good. So I expected to see some sideboard play. Here's Metallic Rebuke right here. This is 2 and a blue. That's 3 mana for an instant with Improvise. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 of anything. Okay, so there are definitely some ways you could finagle this into a mana leak by turn 2. You know, turn 1, Thraben Inspector. Turn 2, you got a mana leak. Also, there's the Hope of Gearper that we just saw. You know, play that turn 1, and then on turn 2, you've got a mana leak online. That's very good. You know, there's a lot of 1 mana artifacts right now. Actually, we just saw all of the implements yesterday. That's a thing. We just saw the map that only costs 1 mana too. So there are 0 mana cost artifacts too. You know, you've got Ornithopter and Bonesaw, but you're not going to do that. You might do Ornithopter though. My favorite is probably Thraben Inspector though on turn 1 into mana leak up by turn 2. So I think this card might actually see a little bit of play. Now if you don't have an artifact in play by turn 1, then this basically becomes like a worse spell shrivel, which I don't like about the card, but I do still think that people might try and get some play out of this thing. Here's Ravenous Intruder right here. That's 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/2 gremlin with sacrifice an artifact. Ravenous Intruder gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I'm going to call this Atog Nito because it's basically an Atog in disguise. I mean, this is Commander players, by the way, another way for a way to play a second Atog. That's pretty cool. And we have Atog in Standard in a format full of nothing but artifacts. That seems pretty good too. I'm not really sure how much play Atog would see if it were printed nowadays, but we're going to find out. We're certainly going to find out. I just like that we have Atog back. I really wish they could just reprint Atog, but you know, whatever. I'm just glad to have you back, buddy, and I'm glad we can play 2 of you in Commander and stuff. That's pretty cool too. Hey guys, Atog. Let's freak out about Atog. He's back, basically, sort of, kind of. Here's Heretical Thopterist. At least that's the translation I've got, although that second word in its name looks like dissident to me, but whatever. It's 5 mana, that's 3, a blue, and a red for a 2/2 Human Artificer with Improvise. And it's got, when Heretical Thopterist enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 Flying Thopter creature tokens. Okay, so you can do like minimal work and sort of finagle this down into a Whirler Rogue. That seems pretty good right there. And if you get it down to like 2 or 3 mana, then it becomes like fantastic. He plays for 2 mana and it's really, really good. That's going to be a little hard. But maybe not. We've just seen a bunch of 1 mana artifacts. We've got 0 mana artifacts already. So it's not like it would be impossible. But I don't think you'd build your entire deck around getting this on turn 3. You know what I mean? It's probably not worth it at that point. But this does look really good in Limited. You know, in Draft and Sealed, this looks like a fantastic card. Especially in Draft, if you're building the Improvise deck, you know, the blue-red artifacts deck, then this is going to be a key piece in that deck. So keep your eyes peeled for Limited, but I'm not really seeing any Standard play. Of course, I could be wrong, because a possible, you know, 2 mana, 2/2 that also gets you 2 flyers is not the worst deal ever, obviously. This could see some play. I wouldn't put it past it. Here's Universal Solvent right here. It's just 1 mana for an artifact, but you pay 7 and you tap it and sack it to destroy target permanent. Alright, so it's a common. It's got that going for it. You can like play it in Pauper, but I don't think you will, honestly. Pauper is actually a much faster format than it looks like, or than people give it credit for, and I don't know that 7 mana is going to be what you want to do. So I like that it only costs the 1. That's awesome, and you'll probably play this in Limited when you get it at your pre-release or something. You know, it's removal. That puts an artifact in the graveyard, is an artifact on the board until you sack it, so you can use it for Improvise. I think there are definitely applications in Limited for it. It's not going to see any Standard play, almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed. And here's the final card spoiled so far, at least, as of the recording of this video. This is Efficient Construction. It's an enchantment. It costs 4 mana. That's 3 and a blue. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Alright, so this could definitely be a build around in a budget deck or something, but I really, really like it. Again, I'll say this. In Sealed especially. Now in Draft, you could also play this. You could build a deck around it, no sweat. But I like it in Sealed because Sealed is usually much, much slower. And you'll probably still have enough artifacts to power this thing. Plus a couple of cards with Improvise. I like that this works with Improvise. The more artifacts you play, the better chance you have of like improvising easily. So I like that too. And I like the fact that, you know, you cast 2 or 3 artifact spells in one turn and suddenly you got a field full of Thopters. There's a few good things about this card that I really, really like. You know, we don't have Spy Network anymore, which is kind of blah, but we you know, we at least have this. So that's something. Again, budget decks, I think could try to build around this and have a good time at least. And with that, we have now officially seen a little bit more than half of the set. We've seen like 96 cards and there's 184. So that is just half the set. Although we haven't seen a whole bunch of commons yet, so I would probably expect the power level to dip in the next couple of days, as it already looks as though it's doing. But, you know, Wizards may take that last day to show us the most powerful cards in the whole set. So strap in. We don't know what's left here. We really don't know. But stick with us, you know, sub if you're new and hit the notification bell to make sure that you get emails, you know, notifications whenever I put up a video. So you'll be the first to see the spoilers. Do that and like the content if you like the content. I may be back with you guys a little bit later on tonight. It depends on when and where they're, you know, when they spoil and what they spoil. So keep up, keep checking the channel if you haven't clicked the bell, because there probably will be another video later on tonight. And with that, I think I'm tapped out. That's all the cards for right now. So I will see you guys later. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.